A quick overview of Vista. So we've been in business for quite some time. We've got a lot of experience with a very diverse set of customers that we've kind of gained throughout the years. A couple of our Vista advantages here. We do have a warehouse, so we have really great lead times on hardware. We can do custom builds, staging and logistics. We can do custom integration on the hardware side. Anything from a single server all the way up to a full rack build with server software, virtualization, UPS, PDUs, storage, you name it. So our core competencies, we've got data center, supply chain, and technology services. What we're going to be talking about today resides in our technology services competency, specifically within our managed services practice. Quick Vista by the numbers. Last year, we shipped more than a few servers, and currently we've got over 40,000 items in stock. So again, let us know where we can help. We can do a lot more than just services and hardware. So before we get into the content on our approach to end user security, we'd like to spend a few minutes on why we're even having this webinar, why we even need to be concerned about endpoint security. So it's not going away. Year over year, we're seeing some pretty significant increases in cybersecurity attacks worldwide, kind of across verticals, business segments, and customer size or company size. And most specifically, we've been seeing a lot more attacks targeted at small businesses. If we were having this conversation maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, a lot of the more sophisticated attacks or kind of zero-day attacks or very targeted attacks really were not being pointed towards small businesses. A lot of times it was towards larger organizations that had deeper pockets, a little bit more at risk. But more and more, we're seeing more of these attacks being targeted at small businesses, even as small as 25 or 50 users. So at some point, about 43% attacks, or excuse me, 43% of the attacks out there are targeted at small businesses. 60% don't survive. And especially when we're looking at the current economic environment, it's on top of the downturn, the existing challenges, being attacked by a pretty significant cybersecurity or a cyber attack would pose a pretty significant challenge to a small business. And when we look at this $900,000 number, it seems big. I will give you that. But even if we look at a relatively small attack that needs to have significant remediation across the network, we're talking about something that could easily cost a couple $100,000. So even a small attack on a smaller business could be pretty significant. So when we look at what is a cyber attack, this is not all inclusive, just kind of gives us an idea of what's out there and what we're trying to address. I do want to point out a few of these specifically. Number one, malware as a service. Previously, you would come across cyber attacks that were homegrown. It could be some bad actors in a government overseas trying to hack in and get information, steal some money, but now you literally can go out and buy malware and even buy support to help you with your malware attack. So I think that's one of the things that why we're seeing it more and more in small businesses, because you've got these kind of boutique hackers that are have all these tools at their disposal and obviously plenty of time, and they're making money off of it. So also, we're going to spend a little bit of time on passwords and social engineering. And when we look at social engineering, really the end user is one of the weakest links in the chain. I mean, me and everyone on this webinar included. So when we look at pretexting and baiting and supply chain disruption, it's something, these are things that we see on a pretty consistent basis with our customers. So what's the result? Obviously, data theft, loss of reputation. The last thing we want is for one of our customers to have to call one of their customers and say, hey, sorry, we can't process orders right now, and have that tough conversation. It most certainly happens. On the far left here, if we talk about business disruption, even if it's a relatively small scale, either attack or vulnerability, you've got a handful of folks that are going to either be working on remediation within your business, and the folks whose machines were attacked, they're not going to be working. So if you look at a small business and even an attack that has that gets 3 or 4 people maybe in operations, and you only have maybe 4 or 5 people in operations, that can be a pretty significant disruption to a business. And lastly, financial loss. The one thing that I would like to note here is quite some time ago when we started going through this journey ourselves and trying to understand what our risks were and what our security posture was, and kind of dotting all of the I's and crossing our T's, something that we found through our research is that our current insurance policy did not cover a cybersecurity incident. We were covered for fire, flood, someone physically coming into the data center and grabbing the servers. We were covered for that, but there was a specific exclusion for a cybersecurity incident. So if there's only one thing you take out of this conversation, I'm going to recommend that you go back and have someone chat with your insurance agent and make sure that you've got coverage there. And if you'd like to have a conversation with us about what our journey looked like and some of the things that we needed to do and hoops we had to go through for those additional protections, we'd be more than happy to have that conversation. So let's get into the meat and potatoes here. So when we look at our endpoint protection and endpoint security offerings, they're within our managed services offering. So here you can see here we've got a few other items on the menu here, and these are all available either in a package or you can get them a la carte. So for whatever reason you wanted to do a little bit of hardware as a service and you wanted to do managed antivirus or endpoint managed detection and response, we can absolutely put together a contract for you. So we've got our approach in a perfect world. You'd look at all of the items on the menu, but we realize that's not going to be a great fit for everyone. So let us know where we can fit in and help you out. So even within our security services, so here's a quick snip of all of the security services that we offer. Again, we're looking at a subset of our managed services here. So to get into what our approaches are, the remainder of the webinar is not meant to be a complete and comprehensive explanation of what we do and the approach that we have. What we're really trying to do here is open up a conversation and give you enough information to have you ask some questions and maybe reach out and have a conversation with us. So please ask some questions throughout the webinar. If you do have any additional questions and you would like to hop on the phone with me or one of our other security engineers, we'd be more than happy to do that. And lastly, with one exception that I'll mention there at the end, because we do have a couple of different product offerings in each of the categories, we're not necessarily going to be mentioning specific products, but as we go through kind of an evaluation and have a discussion with you, we'll outline some specific products that we think would be a good fit there. So getting into, oh, I forgot about this slide. So when we look at our offerings, we can do everything starting at about $1.50 per device per month for next generation antivirus, all the way up to around $30 a month if you would like a fully managed endpoint security solution. So again, a pretty broad set of offerings, and also because we can't put them together a la carte to fill in some gaps where you might need them, we can put together a custom solution for you. So the basics, and these are even things, and there's like I said, there's more than this. These are even things that might not cost you a single penny when it looks when you kind of look at software product offerings or services. So Good password policies. Recently, I don't know when the recommendation came out from Microsoft, but Microsoft has moved away from recommending that you change your password every 90 days. What we're finding is that people are using summer 2020, winter 2020, or using some sort of an increment of a relatively easy password to remember because it's reset pretty frequently. We recommend moving to longer passwords, more complex passwords. There are a number of ways that you can enforce this and do some reporting on it, and not changing that password as often. Integrate into everything that you can. That way you have the ability to use one nice big long password or passphrase that is very unique and difficult to either guess or crack, and integrate that into as much as you possibly can, so we're not having to remember dozens of passwords. Another item on here that isn't necessarily a free or a basic, but password management software. We have an offering that we have under our umbrella of services that we can take a look at. Multi-factor authentication. It's not the end-all be-all for making sure that you've got a secure login, but just turning on some basic MFA for Office 365 or Google Cloud or whatever it might be gets you pretty far down that road. Making sure everything's up to date, making sure we don't have Windows Server 2008 or 2003 servers in the environment. We still come across XP machines. So let's make sure that we're keeping our systems up to date and decommissioning unsupported operating systems. And really our last line of defense is back up often, keep a copy offline. Really, it's not good enough these days to have a disk-based backup on site and be replicating over to a disaster recovery site and not offloading to tape or to some sort of cloud vendor. So it kind of goes back to the 3-2-1 rule. I think it's 3 copies, 2 sites, and at least 1 offline or whatever the 3-2-1 rule is. But make sure that you get, it's 3 copies, 2 different types of media, and at least 1 off-site. Let's make sure that we're getting at least 1 copy offline because hackers have the ability to move laterally and through layer 3 interfaces and can get control of pretty much our whole network. Test recoveries frequently. And lastly, what we're seeing more and more and having more conversations around, especially with the kind of work from home approach or work from anywhere, is let's do what we can to keep people from saving documents on their desktop only. Let's look at OneDrive, let's look at SharePoint, let's look at Google File Stream, whatever it might be, Dropbox, so that we can, if we do have a vulnerability or someone does lose a machine and we have to remotely wipe it through some of our software, let's make sure that we don't have information on that computer that can't be replaced or backed up. So moving on, I can still remember the days, and I know we still have conversations with customers that we don't want antivirus. It's too big of a footprint. It's not important enough. It doesn't really provide that much protection. Hey, I get it. We still have customers that choose not to run antivirus, and I understand why, but the platform that we primarily use has a very low impact on systems. And now that our systems, memory's cheaper, we get a lot more cores, even in our laptop computers. The antivirus agents that we use, the footprint on that machine is almost nothing. Couple other cool things that we're gonna take a look at is if there is a compromised drive, we have the ability to recover it and not using VSS to perform the rollback, because some attacks do turn off and do some funky things with VSS to prevent a recovery or a rollback. So we've got some pretty cool mechanisms in there. Offline protection. So again, some of these next generation attacks are going to wait until the system is offline in order to start kind of doing its nasty work. Application whitelisting and blacklisting is another big thing that we used to hear lots of complaints about in previous generations of antivirus. So the new and a lot of platforms out there are doing a really good job. We think the one that we use is really fantastic, but Antivirus really has made some big strides in the last few years. And again, it is very important from a layered approach to security. So in addition to that, DNS protection. So on the surface, where I like to start with the explanation of what DNS protection is kind of the next generation of content filtering. We used to do a lot of content filtering on the edge. We'd create our policies, we'd create our groups, and we would report on who's going to gambling sites, and we'd block it and do all that kind of fun thing, those fun things. Well, now that we've got this wonderful work from home or work from anywhere, and we no longer have the ability to filter that through either an edge filter or on the firewall, it really doesn't do us any good. We've got a lot of customers that still, I would bet that somewhere between across all of our customers, 30, 50, 60% of their users are working from home, and they don't have that content filter at the edge. So in addition to the content filtering and being able to do it at the endpoint level, we get some other kind of cool things that help with security. HTTPS encryption makes it difficult to inspect internet traffic, even if we are going through a firewall. There's more and more DNS over HTTPS being used these days. Again, our traditional firewalls do not do a great job with filtering that information. So now we've had the ability to, I don't want to say redirect, but direct some of the traffic through a security server out on the web, so that we can really dive into what's going on within that traffic, get a good understanding of where our end users are going. And really, when we look at where we make some improvements, obviously security is improved by doing that, but productivity obviously increases, and outside of security, that productivity is the one that we usually have a lot of conversations around. And then also visibility of the internet use. So maybe we're not going to do blocking or filtering, but just get some good information about what's going on with our users. And again, by doing it at the endpoint level, we can track that information and apply policies regardless of where our end users are working. So moving on, speaking of end users, you see these all the time. No matter what security policies we put in place, no matter how hard we kind of lock things down. But on the flip side of that, when you look at security, we always have to battle this. We have to walk this fine line of making sure that our staff is productive, enabling them to do their job and go above and beyond and be competitive. We don't want to get in their way. So we do have to kind of, like I said, walk this fine line. And at the end of the day, almost in every case, our end users are the weakest link in the chain here. So how do we address that? Security awareness training. This is something that we, even as a technology company, struggled with throughout the years. It is difficult to do a good job with it. And when we look at a lot of our small business customers, or even some of our larger small business customers in kind of the small mid-market, do not have a great way to create some good training curriculum, make sure that people are attending it, making sure that they are picking up what's going on, going through phishing simulations and things like that. So when you add those challenges on top of some of the statistics that you see here on the screen, the first one, 35% of workers know they've been hacked, don't bother to change their passwords, and most likely don't bother to tell anyone about it. And it's not until they start missing POs, or you've got thousands of emails being sent out through your email server or Office 365 tenant, and you start getting blacklisted until you understand what's happened, and you go back through and do a little bit of a root cause analysis. Oh yeah, I do remember clicking on that link, and they never gave me a PO. I thought it was weird. So just really bringing some awareness to the end users. And I'd say also specifically, we've got a lot of new folks that are coming out of maybe even trade schools or college or high school that just do not understand the threat landscape and understand how vulnerable an organization can be by them not having a good awareness. So when we look at our security awareness training, we have a number of campaigns that we kind of cookie cutter and we can get out to you, and it's relatively low cost. We also have the ability to kind of customize these solutions for you and provide you a completely managed solution with consistent training. We've got evaluation campaigns. We have phishing simulation campaigns. We can combine them. New user training. We have the ability to provide monthly or quarterly reporting. We even have some customers that talk about publishing a naughty list for the users who continually click on phishing simulation emails, because if they're clicking on those, they're probably clicking on real phishing emails and other things that we might not know about. So we have the ability to present you with content for continuous engagement. We have micro-learning courses that we put together. Again, we can kind of curate this for you, or we have the ability to work with you to create something that's a little more customized, episodic content, so walking through real-world examples of things that your end users might see. And then lastly, real-world phishing examples. You can kind of see this one on this page is for a Best Buy ad, but we've got the ability to do them for Netflix, or I mean, pick your any of your big ones, and we've got the ability to kind of give you that content, send it out to your users. But again, if you do have a specific vendor or you have a specific type of email that you would like to simulate, we have the ability to work with you to customize those, or we can kind of give you the keys to the car and let you drive and create your own content. And create your own phishing simulations and campaigns. So again, we can kind of work with you on that one. So layered email protection. So again, so spam is in bulk email. Yes, it's a nuisance, and Microsoft and Google and the other email platforms out there are doing a pretty good job of giving you some controls to cut down on those, but still inevitably things get through. So even if you do have some pretty basic email security on either Office 365 or through Gmail, through the G Suite, you still need more protection. On this one, and pretty much on all of our products here, I'd like to mention that we have the ability to do some small pilots or let you run it for a couple of weeks or 30 days to kind of see what it might look like. So the email security solution that we lead with, I really like when some of these enterprise class products create packages and pricing that are a better fit for the SMB and small mid-market and larger SMBs. So we kind of get the same engine, the same protection, the same capabilities for a 50 or 100 user email tenant that we would for 50,000 users. So over 300,000 malware samples are reviewed daily. We've got the two or a couple of features that I really like that are great. And I know other platforms out there do it, but we really are happy with the one that we've picked here. Attachment sandboxing, so we have the ability to choose to open up all of our attachments, make sure that there isn't any malicious content or nefarious intent with those attachments. We have the ability to do URL redirection. So on top of kind of the end user training to look for, hey, does that link say Microsoft, or does that link say Microsoft, or any combination of something that just doesn't look right, or it's a credential capture website. Click here to get the PO, but then you have to log in to view the OneDrive document or whatever it might be. So we're going to redirect URLs that are in emails to, again, a secure server out on the web to identify whether or not that is a malicious site or it's a good site. So again, kind of layering antivirus and DNS protection and security awareness training and URL redirection, because we don't want to rely on one thing to keep our business safe and secure. And lastly, we have the ability to identify and classify content either in emails or attachments, where we can, let's say we want to be able to get a notification if someone sends a email out with a social security number, or we also have the ability to either block that outbound email, or we have the ability to send that email out in an encrypted fashion. So there are some, for those folks that are concerned about personally identifiable information or credit card information or whatever it might be, we can help with some kind of data leak or data loss prevention at the edge through email. So I mentioned earlier in the session that backup is the kind of last line of defense. I would look at endpoint detection and response as the second to last line of defense here. So there is a decent amount of overlap with endpoint detection and response with antivirus, but what we're adding here is the continual monitoring by humans. So the platform that we use has some nice artificial intelligence built in that filters through millions of events, and then we get down to thousands of events that are reviewed on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for a particular customer, and then maybe only 1 or 2 events per month is escalated for further inspection, review, or potentially even remediation. Pretty small agent that goes on to our end user computers. But in addition to the monitoring, there is some threat hunting and counterintelligence research that is done, use of deception tactics. So again, it's a really nice kind of complement to some of the other security products that can really offer that, we'll just kind of say, bow on the cybersecurity box. So we're wrapping up here. And this is, we will mention a product because we're pretty well aligned with the Office 365 platform, Azure. And so when we look at this, now that we've secured the endpoint, what about your data? So what we'd like to do is introduce, or again, at least talk about, open up the conversation about protecting some of our data. And again, I'm not necessarily talking about data in a database, but now that, again, with work from home or work from anywhere, we now have our data kind of everywhere. So we've got data on SharePoint, we've got data in OneNote, we've got data in OneDrive, and we have our users sharing information with customers and sharing sites, and that's really some pretty cool stuff. It really does, and we've seen it in our own business with both our users and our customers being distributed. It really helps keep the ball rolling and keep those relationships going and keep those sales opportunities moving and the supply chain moving with our vendors and our partners. But what are we doing to make sure that that information is secure? So a couple of products that we can talk about are built into either Office 365 or Azure Information Protection, AIP. There are a couple of different levels too. We can also have discussions around EMS for to kind of really round out what's going on. But now that we've got our data that's not only on-prem in our file servers, but off-prem in SharePoint and OneDrive and things like that, and our users have the ability to share it, it's kind of scary stuff. So we have the ability to kind of take you through a journey that can start with just classifying and labeling documents. Is this document customer facing? Can this document be shared with partners? Is this document internal only but not necessarily sensitive information? Is this document for HR or executive eyes only? So we have the ability to classify that data either through recommendations or automatically. And then once we classify that information, we have the ability to do something with it. So control who has access to it. Maybe it's something that we want Sally in accounting to be able to view and print, but maybe one of our end users, we only want them to be able to view it and not print it and not share it and not email it, not save it to OneDrive, not save it to SharePoint and things like that. So we have the ability, once we classify and label these documents, we can do something with it. And lastly, we have the ability to track where our documents are going and who has viewed the documents, and do some reporting and understand if we have a very sensitive document that we feel we might have missed and is now overseas and one of our competitors is viewing it. We actually have the ability to track and report on that. So again, we think it's not necessarily directly related to endpoint security and endpoint protection, but because of our end users and because of our endpoints being really geographically dispersed throughout these kind of new and wonderful times of work from home and work from anywhere, it is really important to take a look at what we want to do around protecting our information. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up.